The air is heavy, thick with the smell of gunpowder, fear, and the bitter fervor of the Civil War. A young man, Juan Pujol García, is cornered. On one side, Franco's fascist forces advance with their flags and their ordered brutality. On the other, the Republicans, backed by communists, with their own purges and their own ideological fury. He's not a soldier. He is a chicken farm manager, a man who has seen his family divided and his homeland consumed by extremes. He hides, not out of cowardice, but from a profound revulsion. He sees the two faces of the same totalitarian coin and swears to himself that if he survives, he will do something, anything, to fight against this plague, for the good of humanity. This promise, made in the midst of the Spanish chaos, would be the seed of one of the most audacious and impactful counterintelligence operations in history. Fast forward to 1941, Madrid. The Spanish Civil War is over, but a greater storm ravages Europe. The Nazi swastika flutters over Paris, Warsaw, and Athens. The roar of Luftwaffe bombers is the soundtrack of London's nights. In Madrid, a city teeming with spies from all nations, Juan Pujol, now 29 years old, tries to fulfill his promise. He knows which side he is on. Nazi brutality is the same ideology he saw destroy his country, now on a continental scale. He needs to do something. He needs to help the Allies, specifically the British, the only nation still firmly resisting in Western Europe. Pujol approaches the British embassy in Madrid. Imagine the scene: an ordinary-looking man with no military or intelligence experience entering the imposing building and asking to speak with the naval attaché. He explains with desperate passion that he wants to be a spy for Britain. He wants to fight against Hitler. The British officer, a man named Anthony Upton, looks at him skeptically. Who is this Spaniard? A provocateur? A lunatic? A double agent sent by the Germans? Pujol has nothing to offer. No contacts, no training, no valuable information. The response is a polite but firm no. The door closes in his face. He tries again and again. At least 4 times he knocks on the British door, and 4 times he is rejected. Frustration could have broken an ordinary man, but Juan Pujol was not ordinary. If the British didn't want him, he would force them to want him. If they didn't trust him, he would give them a reason to trust. And to do that, he devises a plan as dangerous as it is brilliant. If the Allies won't accept him as an agent, he will become an agent for the Nazis first. With a forged new identity, that of a Spanish government official, fanatical about the fascist cause and eager to travel to London on an official mission, Pujol approaches the Abwehr, the German military intelligence, in Madrid. He meets an agent named Friedrich Knappe-Rothai. Pujol sells his story. He talks about his rage against the communists, his contempt for decadent democracy, and his admiration for the new 1,000-year Reich. He is convincing. The Germans, always eager to recruit sources inside Britain, bite the bait. They train him in basic espionage, how to write with invisible ink, how to code messages. They give him money, a new code name, Arabel, and a clear mission: go to England and build a network of spies. But Pujol doesn't go to England. He can't. He has no visa and barely speaks English. Instead, he moves to Lisbon, Portugal, a cauldron of international intrigue. And it is here that the legend begins to be forged. From a modest apartment, with the help of 3 simple tools, a guidebook to Britain, a map, and a train schedule, Juan Pujol begins to invent. He creates a fictional world of espionage. He is not in London, he is in Lisbon. He has no network of agents, he has his imagination. His first letter to his German contact, sent from Lisbon but written as if from London, is a masterpiece of fiction. He describes his arrival, his first impressions of the British capital in wartime, and his difficulties in recruiting sub-agents. To make it all more believable, he invents his first ghost agent, a dismissed KLM pilot who hates the British. Then, a Welshman, member of the Aryan Brotherhood in Swansea, and an army officer in Chislehurst. One by one, he brings these characters to life, each with their own personality, access to information, and motivations. He creates an organizational chart for a spy network that exists only in his mind. His information is a mix of details drawn from travel guides, public newsreels, and pure creativity. He reports the movement of ships that never existed, leaving ports whose activities he only imagined. He describes the morale of the British people, citing conversations that never happened in pubs he never visited. To the Abwehr analysts in Berlin, Arabel's reports are a goldmine. They are detailed, consistent, and seem to come from multiple independent sources. They have no reason to doubt. After all, why would a man invent that 5 warships left Liverpool harbor, detailing their names and tonnages, if it weren't true?
The problem is that sometimes his inventions are dangerously inaccurate. In one of his reports, he mentions that the men in Glasgow would do anything for a litre of wine, a claim any Scotsman would find ridiculous. But the Germans, lacking deep cultural knowledge, accept it. Pujol's system, however, is almost perfect. He informs the Germans that his agents communicate among themselves, so when one agent's report contradicts another's, an error he intentionally makes occasionally to increase realism, he has a ready explanation. One agent is lying to the other to inflate his own importance. It is a hall of mirrors, and Pujol is the master illusionist. The turning point occurs in mid-1942. Pujol, still operating from Lisbon, reads in the newspapers about a large convoy of ships being prepared to sail from the Clyde River in Scotland toward Malta, a crucial island in the Mediterranean. This is Operation Torch, the imminent Allied invasion of North Africa. Pujol, using his ghost network, sends a series of urgent messages to the Abwehr, detailing the convoy, the troops, and their likely destination. Due to the slow postal system he is forced to use, his letter arrives in Berlin too late, days after the North African landing has already happened. To the Germans, this is a definitive proof of Arabel's authenticity. Their agent was not only real, but positioned to obtain information of incalculable value. The failure was not his, it was the communication system. They needed a faster contact. They were more committed to him than ever. But Pujol's report had another effect, one he did not foresee. Across the English Channel, in MI5, the British Security Service, the code breakers at Bletchley Park intercept the German messages about Arabel's report. The analysts are baffled.
They have tight control over all German radio communications to Britain and are confident that all German spies in the country have been captured or turned into double agents. Yet here is a spy, apparently highly productive and successful, operating right under their noses. Who is Arabel? How is he obtaining this information? And most importantly, why can't they find him? The British hunt for a ghost spy, who is actually a Spaniard in Lisbon, desperately trying to join them, had begun. Early 1942, MI5 offices in London. A silent panic settles among the elite of British counterintelligence. The 20 Committee, or XX Committee, the ultra-secret unit in charge of managing all double agents in Britain, faces a ghost. They have an infallible system. Every German spy sent to British soil is captured, and, if cooperative, transformed into a channel to feed disinformation to their masters in Berlin. However, the intercepted transmissions speak of an agent, codenamed Arabel, who is extraordinarily prolific. He commands an entire network, reporting troop and ship movements with impressive details. But Arabel is not on the 20 Committee's list. He has not been captured. He does not exist in their files. A human hunt begins, but they are looking for a man who is not in the country.
The first clue emerges from Pujol's own lies. MI5 analysts reviewing Arabel's reports notice peculiarities. They are small details but glaring to anyone living in Britain. He describes London traffic in a way that suggests he has never been there. He reports troop movements along a road that would be logistically impossible. The most famous anomaly was his observation that the men in Liverpool had a love for wine that would make them betray their country, a completely misguided cultural stereotype. It was clear, whoever Arabel was, he was building his intelligence from secondary sources, not direct observation. He was a genius of fiction, but not perfect. The discovery happens when Pujol's wife, Araceli, in a mix of desperation and frustration with her husband's double life, contacts an American embassy officer in Lisbon, who in turn informs his British colleague, MI6 agent Cyril Mills. Mills had already heard of an eccentric Spaniard who had tried to volunteer months earlier. Piecing it together, the rejected aspiring spy, the ghost reports, and the location in Portugal, MI5 realizes the stunning truth. Their most feared German spy and the most persistent Spanish volunteer were the same person. In April 1942, Cyril Mills and his superior, Desmond Bristow, arrange a meeting with Juan Pujol García in a Lisbon café. The tension is palpable. Pujol, not knowing if he is about to be arrested, recruited, or eliminated, calmly reveals his entire operation. He describes his fictional network, his sources of information, the travel guide, the map, and his method for deceiving the Abwehr. The British officers fall silent, alternating between disbelief and growing admiration. This man, alone and without resources, had managed to fool the entire Nazi intelligence machine for over a year. He was not just a potential double agent, he was a prodigy of deception. Pujol is flown to London. Finally, he sets foot in the country he described with so many imaginary details. There, he is introduced to his new handler, an MI5 officer named Tommy Harris. The choice could not have been more perfect. Harris, born in Paris to a British father and Spanish mother, spoke Spanish fluently and possessed a mind as creative and meticulous as Pujol's. They formed an unlikely and inseparable duo, a partnership that would change the course of the war. MI5 gives Pujol his new codename, one that would become legendary, Garbo, because in their eyes, he was the world's greatest actor. From a secure office in London, Operation Garbo begins in earnest. What was once a solo act, limited by slow mail and tourist guides, now becomes a symphony of disinformation, backed by all the resources of the British Secret Service. The first task is to establish a faster contact with the Abwehr. The Germans, thrilled at the prospect of communicating via radio with their star agent, send instructions. MI5 provides Garbo with a radio operator, and suddenly his ghost network can transmit intelligence almost in real time. Garbo and Harris spend months expanding and deepening the fictional network. It grows to 27 agents, all with names, personalities, and different accesses. There was a disgruntled army officer, a Venezuelan sailor on the Clyde River, a secretary in the Ministry of Information, a fanatical Welsh nationalist who led a group called the Aryan Empire Brothers. Each of these characters generated their own reports, creating the illusion of a vast and successful espionage operation inside Britain. For credibility, Garbo's reports were a carefully crafted mix: 90% public or low-value information, 5% pure fiction, and 5% genuine intelligence, but delayed or strategically harmless, provided by MI5.
The Germans swallowed it all. They trusted Garbo implicitly. His reports were so valued that they reached the desks of the High Command in Berlin. They generously funded the operation, sending money to pay the salaries of Garbo's 27 ghost agents, funds that MI5 gladly pocketed to finance the counter-operation. The trust was so absolute that when one of Garbo's fictional agents died, the Abwehr insisted on paying a pension to his widow, another character created by Garbo and Harris. With the Germans' trust secured, Garbo was positioned to execute the ultimate deception. In late 1943, Allied leaders were finalizing plans for the largest amphibious invasion in history, Operation Overlord, the landing in occupied France. For it to succeed, Hitler needed to be convinced that the main attack would happen elsewhere. A monumental lie was needed, one that would make the Third Reich move entire armies. And to tell that lie, the Allies would turn to their lead actor, the master illusionist whose greatest performance was about to begin. The stage was set to deceive the Führer himself. Late 1943. The corridors of Allied High Command are filled with maps, plans, and the weight of a monumental decision. Operation Overlord is set. The invasion will occur on the beaches of Normandy. But Normandy is a risky bet. The beaches are wide, the German defenses are formidable, and the supply lines would be long. Success depended not only on force, but on surprise, and more importantly, on deception. If the Germans knew the true landing site, they could concentrate their panzer divisions and crush the Allied forces on the beach. The answer to this dilemma was Operation Fortitude, the most complex and ambitious deception operation in military history, and at the center of it all was Garbo. The central lie of Fortitude was simple and audacious. The Normandy invasion would be just a diversionary attack. The real blow, the main invasion, would come later at Pas-de-Calais, the closest point between England and France. It was the location German military logic already expected. The task of Garbo and the 20 Committee was to turn that expectation into an unshakable certainty in Adolf Hitler's mind. To sell this lie, the Allies did not just build a story, they built an alternative reality. In southeast England, opposite Pas-de-Calais, they conjured a ghost army, the first United States Army group, FUSAG. It was a fake army, but it looked terrifyingly real. Luftwaffe reconnaissance planes flying over Kent and East Anglia photographed fields full of Sherman tanks, except they were inflatable rubber. They saw hundreds of landing craft in the port, but they were made of canvas and wood. The air was saturated with fake radio traffic, with operators transmitting movement orders, supply reports, and soldiers' trivial conversations for an army that did not exist. And to command this ghost army, the Allies assigned their general most feared and respected by the Germans, George S. Patton. After disciplinary incidents, Patton was on the Allies' bench, but to German intelligence, he was their best field commander. It was inconceivable that the main invasion would be led by anyone else. Placing him in command of Fusag was a psychological masterstroke. In this theater of illusions, Garbo was the principal narrator. His 27 ghost agents came to life, each contributing a piece of the puzzle. Tommy Harris and Juan Pujol worked day and night, orchestrating a constant flow of reports to Berlin. Agent 4, a fictional quartermaster officer, reported the massive arrival of winter supplies and heavy artillery ammunition in Kent, inadequate for a mere diversion. Agent 7, the Welsh nationalist, sent information gathered from soldiers in pubs about the imminent race to Calais.
Garbo himself, as the master spy, synthesized this information, adding his own strategic analysis, confirming to his Abwehr controllers that, while there were rumors of activity elsewhere, the overwhelming focus of Allied forces was in the southeast, pointing straight at Pas-de-Calais. He transmitted hundreds of messages. There were over 500 radio transmissions between January and June 1944. Each message was a work of art, designed to be intercepted and corroborated by other German intelligence sources. Garbo's reports were so detailed and reliable that they became the OKW's, the German Armed Forces High Command's primary source of intelligence on invasion preparations. Hitler personally read summaries of Garbo's reports. He was hooked on the story the Spaniard was telling. The result was exactly what the Allies expected. Hitler and his generals, especially Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt, commander-in-chief in the West, kept the powerful 15th Army, a formidable force with 19 divisions, including several elite panzer units, firmly anchored in the Pas-de-Calais region. They were waiting for Patton and his ghost army, guarding the wrong place. As D-Day approached, Garbo's operation reached an almost unbearable level of tension. He had to report the real preparations for the Normandy invasion, which were happening in plain sight in southwest England, without giving the game away. Ignoring them would destroy his credibility.
The solution was brilliant. Garbo reported the troop and ship concentrations in Portsmouth and Southampton, but presented them as part of the diversion plan. In a crucial message, he informed Berlin, "The preparations for the invasion taking place in southwest England are a large-scale diversionary maneuver to divert enemy reserves in order to ensure the success of the decisive attack that will come elsewhere." In the early hours of June 6, 1944, with the invasion fleet already crossing the Channel, Garbo executed his final and boldest act. At 3 a.m., he contacted his superior handlers via radio with an urgent message, asking that his superior be woken immediately. He had vital information about the invasion. The Germans, annoyed at being woken in the middle of the night, told him to call later. Garbo insisted, creating drama about the urgency. Finally, 2 hours later, he managed to transmit his warning that the fleet was on its way, knowing it would arrive too late for the Germans to mount an effective defense in Normandy. But the purpose of that message was not to stop the landing. It was to cement his own credibility for what was to come. When the first troops hit Utah and Omaha beaches, the analysts in Berlin looked at Garbo's late report and thought, "He warned us. Our man was right. The failure was ours." Now more than ever, they would believe every word he said. The Normandy invasion had begun, but the most critical part of Garbo's mission was about to happen. Convincing Hitler that the landings underway were, in fact, just the diversion he had promised.
Morning of June 7, 1944, at the Wolf's Lair, Hitler's headquarters in East Prussia, confusion reigns. Frenetic reports arrive from the French coast. An invasion fleet of unprecedented size has landed thousands of troops in Normandy. The chaos is total. Generals demand reinforcements, insisting that the powerful panzer divisions stationed near Pas-de-Calais be immediately sent south to counterattack. But amid the panic, a voice of calm and confidence arrives from London. It is the voice of Arabel, Germany's most trusted agent. At 9:47 a.m. on D-Day, hours after the landing, Garbo sends one of his most important messages. He does not deny the Normandy invasion, he frames it. He informs Berlin that this attack, though large-scale, is exactly what he had predicted, the diversionary maneuver. The objective, he explains, is to draw German reserves, especially the Panzer divisions, away from Pas-de-Calais, clearing the way for the real blow, which will be struck by General Patton's First Army Group. For Hitler and the German High Command, Garbo's message is a balm. It confirms their prejudices and offers a logical explanation for the confusing events. They wanted to believe the main invasion would be at Calais. Patton's reputation, the Ghost Fuseg army, and above all, Garbo's impeccable credibility made the lie irresistible. The order is given. The 15th Army, with its 19 divisions and hundreds of tanks, must remain immobile. They must wait for Patton. As Allied troops fight and die on the beaches and in the bocage fields of Normandy, waging a desperate battle to secure their beachhead, the force that could annihilate them sits just hours away, staring at the sea, waiting for an attack that will never come. With each passing day, Garbo's lie became more crucial. The Normandy beachhead was fragile. A concentrated counterattack by the 15th Army's Panzer divisions in the first 48 hours could have been catastrophic for the Allies. Garbo and Tommy Harris worked tirelessly to maintain the illusion. The network of 27 agents goes into overdrive. The Ministry of Information agent reports that British propaganda is deliberately downplaying Patton's strength to deceive the Germans. The agent in Dover Harbor describes the ongoing buildup of landing craft. Garbo himself sends strategic analyses expressing frustration that the Allies are taking so long to launch the real attack. He paints a picture of a divided Allied command, with Montgomery leading the feint in Normandy and Patton impatient to launch the main invasion. For crucial weeks in June and July, the charade holds. Hitler refuses to release his best divisions. When his frontline generals, like Erwin Rommel, beg for reinforcements to repel the growing Allied force in Normandy, Hitler rebukes them. He is convinced Rommel is falling into the enemy's trap. The source of his conviction? The detailed reports of a Spanish chicken farm manager sitting in an office in London. The irony reaches its peak on July 29, 1944. As Allied forces finally break through German lines in Normandy in Operation Cobra, a message arrives for Garbo from his German controllers. It is not a request for information, but a congratulation. For his exceptional services to the Reich, for his accuracy, and for keeping Berlin informed about enemy plans, Adolf Hitler personally authorized the award of the Iron Cross to Juan Pujol García. The spy who was methodically dismantling the Third Reich was decorated with one of its highest military honors. The British, not to be outdone, later named him a member of the Order of the British Empire. Pujol would become the only person to receive decorations from both sides during the war for completely opposing acts. In early August, the lie finally begins to wear thin. With the breakout from Normandy in full swing and Paris on the brink of liberation, even Hitler could no longer deny reality. The Normandy invasion was indeed the main one. He finally authorizes the movement of the 15th Army south, but it is too late. The Normandy beachhead was no longer a vulnerable strip of sand, but an established battlefront, with hundreds of thousands of men and an endless supply of materiel. The German window of opportunity had closed forever. Operation Fortitude and Garbo's performance was a success that exceeded expectations. Military historians agree that the retention of the 15th Army in Pas-de-Calais was perhaps most decisive in the success of D-Day. Without this deception, Allied casualties would have been astronomically higher, and the outcome of the invasion could have been terribly different. The promise Juan Pujol made on a dusty street in Barcelona had been fulfilled. With a web of lies, he deceived a dictator, moved ghost armies, and helped seal the fate of the Third Reich without ever firing a single shot. But for a man who lived in the shadows, disappearing was as important as deceiving.